All right, Cowboy Nation, I understand. I get it. A lot of people are angry. A lot of people are upset. It is what it is, especially looking back at this team for the last, 20 years, 15 years, 10 years, 5 years. We have not been doing anything as relates to deep playoff runs and just making a fundamental change as relates to the philosophy. We can't stick to a particular philosophy, whether or not we're going to be a defensive-minded team, an offensive-minded team, a run-first team, a pass-happy league, or a pass-happy team. So there's a lot of stuff that's moving around, and it's hard to find the positive aspect of it. You got one segment of the fans thinking that, hey, it's all about the coaching, right? You got the other segment of the fan base saying that, hey, it's the owner, the general manager, the scouting department. And then you got another segment of the fans looking at it like, hey, Law, it's the players. It's nobody but the players. And I'm sitting there like, hey, who empowers everybody, right? And they got to start with the ownership. But we can look at the positive aspect of it. What are the positive, Law? Well, last year the Cowboys were averaging 32 to maybe around 34 points a game. Okay, and that's even with the makeshift offensive line. Don't tell me about the offensive line now, Cowboy Nation. Don't tell me that the offensive line was not the issue when we just witnessed the Super Bowl. One of the greater passers of the ball this generation have ever seen in this decade, right? Pat Mahomes, and this is the early decade at that, was shut down basically because he couldn't get the ball out, right? Couldn't go through his progressions, couldn't step up inside the pocket. So many other things that people were trying to throw out there, right? So the offensive line is something important, right? So our offensive line was in shambles, right? Right? The offense still was able to get points on the board. Was it efficient enough? A lot of people like to throw out the garbage time stats and things like that, which garbage time only exists in Dallas Cowboys land. And I like the straw man argument that this team basically with Dak Prescott cannot win, right, against winning opponents. Even when you pull out the facts, people will overlook that. Even in the Jets game, I was looking back at that game in 2019, the Jets game. They called a touchdown away. They took it away. How many points did the Cowboys lose by? Oh, okay. And even when we look at the Saints game, multiple situations, multiple issues with that game. Elbow down, but it wasn't down, but it was down. And they call it, hey, it wasn't down. 6-point swing, just like that. 2 consecutive passes to Amari Cooper. Well, it wasn't consecutive. I might be wrong on that. But 2 passes out of that game. PI on the offense, Amari Cooper. Drive killers, man. Field goal kickers, missing kicks and things like that. But that's old news, right? And heading into 2020, the first game of the season, big grand opening for the LA Rams there, I believe, right? About to say Chargers, but the LA Rams. We played them. PI call Phantom on Michael Gallup. Changed the game just like that. That was against a winning team. That was against a playoff team. But I understand. I get the argument, the straw man argument. I feel what people are saying. But when we look at everything, Dak Prescott went down. Of course, they added in another quarterback named Andy Dalton. It was started off a little slow, and then towards the latter part of the year last season, we saw the defense doing something. We saw the defense turning the corner, getting takeaways, turnovers, those type of things, forcing the ball out. We found something out of Donovan Wilson, although most of the fan base will say, hey, y'all should have been put him out there. We've been saying that, right? And we saw a little bit out of the front, just a little bit. D-Law was solid towards the end. And on top of that, Aldon Smith, he kind of slowed down a little bit, but there was this other guy named Randy Gregory who really showcased a lot of talent. So we can pump the brakes a little bit and say, okay, if we add a few pieces just to be objective to everything. I know it was a bad year to last season. It was the middle of a whole bunch of crazy stuff that went on. Coach passing away. That's the strength and conditioning coach. One can argue that the strength and conditioning coach is a major, He's in a relationship with all of the players. Everybody that ever touched the field for the Dallas Cowboys last year visited his office at some point. So that's a major role right there. And it is what it is at this point. When we look back at everything, we can try to find the positives and say, okay, offensive line in this draft, how can we better our best at that? How can we improve the offensive line? We know without a shadow of a doubt that Tyron Smith may not give you 17 weeks. He may not. But there's no way where you can look at it and say, okay, we're going to stop looking at tackles. No, you still look at a tackle. You pray to God that La'el Collins will be healthy and ready to lock it up and roll out there and be that massive right tackle for you, right? And news out there that he's working out, he's doing his thing, right? So how can we improve in those categories? Well, it always goes back to the draft. You may have to draft another offensive tackle that can help you out in those aspects of it. Look at your team as a complete and say, okay, Amari Cooper, he did a great job, right? Right? Amari Cooper did a great job last season. Who was on pace to having one of the better years as it relates to total reception numbers. I think he was almost about to beat Michael Irvin's reception, I guess, within a year. Record. But that's with multiple quarterbacks at that. But that's a story of a different day. We can look at the wide receiver core. We can say, all right, cool. Michael Gallup, CeeDee Lamb, Amari Cooper, Cedric Wilson showed up in multiple games. I liked what he was doing out there. And you got to throw in Noah Brown. Those guys all showed up at one point of time. And I like that. You got to look at those type of things. That's the positive aspect of it. One can look back and say, man, Schultz did a great job. Blake Bell did a good job as well. We didn't think that Blake Jarvin would go down and Schultz show up and say, hey, hello, Cowboy Nation, I'm here. Bring it. I'm right here, and I ain't going anywhere. I'm right here. That was Schultz. So he showed up, and he did his deal out there. So shout out to Schultz. He did it, a wonderful situation. It's just that the offensive line, the front five, Biotish, yes, he gave us a little gleam of hope, but we need some more consistency out of him. He got injured too. The whole offensive line just was in a mess. But now if we could just add some extra pieces on that offensive line, move the offense to the side. Shout out to Tony Pollard. He showcased wonderful techniques and skills, being that change of pace back. We just now need Kellen Moore to grab hold to those two running backs, Tony Pollard and Ezekiel Elliott, and see how they can split this thing up. Let's not have it all on one running back, number 21, by the way, and stop letting him get in the ball just because he got the money, but see how you can spread both of those guys out and use them as a weapon. And that's something that Kellen Moore will have to become better at. Now, this season, heading into 2021, Kellen Moore, this will be his third year as offensive coordinator. So around your third year, we should see something out of him, right? Right? And I hope and I pray that even Dan Quinn can look at this thing and say, I got a chip on my shoulder. I got something to prove, right? And Dan Quinn bring in a better defensive mindset and help this defense out collectively. Now, just to rest assured with everything, there's an article out there saying, hey, who will be a valuable backup quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys? And they brought up Tyrod Taylor. And I started to look at Tyrod Taylor's resume. He was all right at Ravensland. And then when he went over to the Bills, wonderful job. Wonderful job in 2015, 20 touchdowns to 6 interceptions, still completed quarterback percentage completion rate was right at north of 60% of his passes. And then he was north of 80 percentile as a QBR, right in that sweet spot of 88 to 89. I think even one year he had 120, but that was didn't play a lot of games to qualify for a good situation. But he averaged anywhere between 3,000 close to 4,000 yards. Not all the way there, but I'm looking at somebody with similar, not the same, but similar skill sets as Dak Prescott, so that in a situation, if something were to happen, at least you have a quarterback that's similar. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying that Tyrod Taylor is the next best thing since sliced bread, but I'm looking at all of those things and seeing how this team can really develop in that aspect. Now, this free agency will be a whole lot different from any other free agency because of the cap numbers is not as high as it's supposed to be projected. So there may be a lot of free agent guys out there. Remember this. The free agency, there's multiple phases of the free agency. Of course, there's opening week. That's when everything is hot and ready, right? That's when all of the players with the high profile are out there. And then the second week start dying off, and then third week you in pretty much like, okay, these are some of the scraps that's left over. And then there's the draft. Maybe the draft is coming within the second week of the free agency, but you guys get what I'm saying, right? Then the draft. The draft always open up other opportunities for young players to be on the roster. Then the owners look back at the older veteran guys and say, you know what? I can get rid of some of these veteran guys. And that final wave of free agency, that's when you really can go out there and start picking and looking at players. Now, if you're looking at a cheap way to pick up some players, if you don't want to pay the guaranteed money to some of the veterans, sometimes owners will look at it and say after week 1, then they will pick up said veteran off the street because you don't have to guarantee their money for the entire year. So there's multiple ways, but Jerry Wayne Jones going to have to figure out how to wheel and deal in this thing. And that is the reality. You can't sit down with your hands under your butt. You got to start moving stuff. On top of that, in order for all of this to happen, you got to figure out this Dak Prescott. Let me know of your thoughts. Let me know of your concerns. Post me your concerns down below. Leave a comment about all what I just spoken about the free agency, about Dak Prescott, the positive aspect of it, the 32 to 33 points a game they was averaging, right? And see how we can better the best of this particular team. Let me know. And who you guys got in this draft, right? Draft time for your mind, right? That's been my time. I really thank you all for yours. And remember, you're listening to nothing but the best. Salute.